At this point, I would call the Winona County Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. So let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And again, I appreciate your waiting for us. I apologize, we ran a tiny bit over. The first item is public comments. So anyone wishing to make comments on any issue before the board, comments before the board, the issue can be anything, whether it's before the board currently or not. Come up to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Hi, Mark Engen, Winona City resident and a member of the Parks and Environment Committee.
Can you just give us your address, please, Mark?
Address 857 West Howard Street.
Thank you.
Is that all you need?
Yes. Sorry.
Sorry. I just kind of want to speak in favor of the recycling and composting grant application that is coming before the board tonight, and the need by the county to study this and the feasibility of this as a long-term composting possibility for other people to carry on after this study goes. So I guess that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to make comments before the board? Please come and state your name and your address. Okay, for the third and final time, is there anyone wishing to make comments before the board? Okay, the public comment session is closed. Can we have approval of the county board minutes from January 8th of 2019?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Jacob, to approve the board minutes from January 8th, 2019. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the minutes are approved. Let's take approval of consent comments.
I have nothing.
Two things, please.
Okay. Commissioner Meyer? Okay, I have nothing.
Nothing for me. I'd like to pull item 6.11.
Pull item 6.11. Okay, we can make 6.11 item 7.0. Attorney?
I have nothing.
Okay. Attorney Preston, excuse me. Okay. Approval of the agenda as amended.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Ward,
Second.
second by Commissioner Olson to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the agenda is approved. Mr. Fritz, can you read us the consent business, please?
I'll be happy to do that. Department recommendations 6.1, approve LG 220 gambling application for exempt permit Bluff County chapter of Minnesota Deer Hunters Association. 6.2, approve county board appointments to 2009 boards and committees. 6.3, review, approve, quote, and work to upgrade HVAC at landfill storage building. 6.4, approve BKV agreement for architectural and construction oversight services in compliance with best value alternative under Minnesota statute 375.21 subdivision 1B. 6.5, review and approve storage space lease at 152 West 3rd Street. 6.6, approve Schmidt-Goodman furniture agreement in compliance with best value alternative under Minnesota statute 375.21 subdivision 1B. 6.7, approve monthly resolution. 6.8, approve purchase of service agreement for transportation of children and youth in foster care placement. 6.9, approve State of Minnesota Department of Human Services County grant contract for children's mental health respite care services. 6.10, approve Personnel Board of Appeals resolution. 6.11 was pulled to be discussed later. 6.12, approve agreement with Trimin Systems, Inc. 6.13, approve transfer of funds from the general fund to the community services fund as of 12/31/18. And 6.14 is confirm payment of disbursements. That concludes the consent agenda.
Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Olson to accept the consent business as read. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. General business, item 7.0, which was item 6.11. It's on page 95 of the agenda for anyone who might be following along in the audience. This is dealing with planning and environmental services. The title of this agenda item is Accept the Greater Minnesota Recycling Composting Grant Award and Approve the Grant Agreement.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Hi, Commissioners. Good evening. We have before us the opportunity to accept a considerable grant, $93,000 from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to do a feasibility study, the possibility of doing a regional composting facility. I have a PowerPoint presentation here that just run through the highlights of the request. So Minnesota counties have a statutory requirement to develop a 10-year solid waste plan to guide their solid waste activities. We are well into the last 10-year plan that we adopted back in 1912, and when I say we, I mean the county board. Next slide. The comprehensive solid waste plan requires counties to demonstrate progress in assessing the types of waste generated within the county and the volumes of the different materials, investigating opportunities to increase diversion of solid waste from the solid waste stream. Right now, all of the solid waste from Winona County is going into landfills. And also, they put a premium on collaborating with adjacent counties to improve efficiency of regional waste systems. So this is the slide. Tells you it's a state present volumes, but it gives you a sense of where the waste is going, what kind of end. And you can see the bottom, the orange, is organics material, which you can see the uptick in the last few years where communities have responded to the opportunities to compost their food waste to make it into a marketable, valuable end product. So specifically our solid waste plan with regard to this grant application, we have committed to working toward a system for food waste recycling or composting. We committed to studying the feasibility of instituting source-separated compostable materials in the industrial sector, and we also said we would work with neighboring counties to look for regional efficiencies. And by way of background, we came before the board back in March of last year to get the okay to apply for this proposal to do this study, and the board gave its approval. So at that point, we met with staff and commissioners from Houston and Fillmore County. We have a representative from Fillmore County here today, staff member, and private industry to get input on whether or not they thought that this made sense to proceed. And you'll see in the packet that we have 7 letters of endorsement to support this, including the counties as well as a member of the private industry who's also here today, Gary Harder, who is our recycling contractor, and he knows the industry side and the collection side, so his input was appreciated as well. In general, the project was deemed valuable to the counties, and they provided us with their letter of support. Also included in the letters are businesses and institutions in the county that are really looking for a better opportunity to do their organics composting. Then we also had interviewed the operator of the largest commercial composting business in the state, and got some positive response in terms of whether it was worth looking into, because it's challenging. It's not a large value. It's not a high value material, food waste, but it is definitely not appreciated in the garbage stream or in incinerators. And so together, then the PCA and county staff worked to create the work plan that you see that's included in the contract in your packet. And so the PCA awarded us the grant to study a source-separated organics facility for the region. The grant does not require any cash match from Winona or anyone else. We would use it to identify suitable location or locations in the region to site a facility, review options for what the best type of the composting process might be, survey to determine raw materials available, work with regional partners, and also to work to determine what the demand and market price would be for the finished product. And with regard to market for finished compost, Minnesota is now speccing the use of compost in their public sector construction, roadways, and stormwater protection projects to better prevent erosion and increase soil organic matter. So that's a really important step in creating demand for the end product. So to summarize, we will work, the market analysis will determine whether the private sector is ready to do a composting project like this. The proposal would assumes privately operated facility, not dependent on local governments for operational costs at all. We would, with the study, come out with a site plan and engineering design for a regional composting facility, and we will collaborate with our area counties and existing facilities throughout the process to make sure that, you know, we don't upset other processes in place. We will also inform the private sector and the PCA on the viability and future funding needs for such a facility coming out of the study. So if the grant is accepted, this is our timeline, develop and release of the RFP this first quarter of this year. The second quarter of the year would be taken up with interviews and selecting the contractors that would do the lion's share of the work, develop a contract with the consultants. The third quarter would be devoted to getting input, and then the fourth quarter of the project would be working specifically on details like site, engineering operations, and development of a business plan, because we really do, when we're finished with this study, we want to be able to come out with a plan that people can look at and say, yeah, it makes sense to go forward, and we're interested in investing in this, or we're not. So we anticipate that in the summer of 2020, we'll be in the stage of evaluating final reports and reviews by county boards and partners. And that's all the slides that were in your packet, but I would like to say that in the last 2 weeks since we submitted this, we've had a few more conversations that are important, and one of them is that we have spoken with Olmsted County, who's very much interested in doing this same process. The Destination Medical Center generates a great deal of organics waste, and it's kind of funny because they're kind of trying to pursue a similar line, so we thought that there could be some really good we could work collaboratively together where we could provide the data specific to our region, and Olmsted would obviously do their research for theirs, and then we can work together on developing what a facility would need to be like, the marketing study that would be the same for both of us, for both groups. So that's really very exciting, and they've invited us to meet with them in the next couple of weeks because they're just starting on their process too. So.
Okay. At this point, I would ask if there's any questions. Thank you for that background and summary. I know that Ann Morse is here. We also have a committee member from the Parks and Environment Committee, and this was discussed at the recent Parks and Environment Committee meeting. Is that correct?
Right, and this is the vice chair, Mark Engen, and
Good, I didn't know his title, but that's even better. And we also have our department head. So if anyone has questions for the presenter or for any of the people associated with this, Commissioner Jacob.
In that Parks and Environmental Committee meeting, I had asked a number of times at multiple meetings to involve Olmsted and neighboring counties, including Wabasha. So this is the first I've heard about Olmsted having any participation. Tonight is the first I'm hearing of that. Is their position that they are developing their own system and they're looking for information, or are they interested in being part of a regionally developed facility?
I would say that the idea is that they're interested in a regional facility. We talked about, they said, they acknowledge that there's not a lot of dollars out there. People have to invest if it's not a really tight system, and they think that the regional nature of it would make the economics work better. So, and the meeting that we have with Olmsted County would also be with staff from the Destination Medical Center as well. So it's sort of almost a three-part group.
Commissioner Ward?
It's amazing when you Google something, how much stuff pops up about that topic. And so I Googled this a couple weeks ago, and now I get this little, they're trying to sell me this little tabletop composter that sits on my kitchen table or counter, and I can throw my scraps in there, and within 2 to 3 hours, it comes out a dry product that I can put on my garden. I have failed to look how much that would cost me initially, and then what the electric charges would be to transfer that lettuce leaf into a dry compostable thing. But there are alternatives for small scale, and it is kind of a growing entity. Garbage and recycling, can it exist without governmental subsidies? And maybe the gentleman from industry probably is better apt to handle that.
Well, my answer, I assume that you're interested in as it relates to this project?
Well, we get, government seems to be heavily involved in garbage in a lot of different ways. And so is it always going to need, because you did indicate future funding, government subsidies, this study is supposed to look at the economics, and do the economics that you're looking at include government subsidies to make it viable?
Our intention is that it would need to go forward, it would need to not have operational subsidies.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. Because in the verbiage, you say the purpose of the grant is to support future investment by the private industry. Mm-hmm. So also in your plan, because you talk about facilities, so site engineering, and I know in early on discussions you were talking about the park, and of course I said that's a park, it's not the, in my opinion, not the best site for it. So when we talk about site engineering, will it be totally private land? Or are you thinking, again, maybe you don't know?
No. We really want to let the the volumes of material and the locations guide where is a suitable best geographic location for a facility, because the biggest expense really is transportation of the materials to a facility. So siting is really,
Yeah, you can't haul this stuff very far and
Yeah.
make it economically viable. But I would hope, and I know we have a private sector person here, is that if by chance it would end up on public property, there would be a rent factor we could collect, correct? I mean, it won't come free. I'm just warning them. And then starting before we start composting, I really have an issue of why we have so much waste. I mean, why are we overproducing and throwing, you read articles. Why has the United States got how many million of kids that are hungry every night, and yet here we are discussing spending $125,000 to figure out what to do with waste. Something's wrong here, folks. We're talking about getting rid of food scraps when I think we should be talking about not having as much food scraps. And I'm a little cautious on Destination Medical Center, what kind of stuff we might be talking. That's a whole nother, we're not talking about medical waste. That's a whole separate entity.
no, just food waste.
Just food waste. So I guess that's disturbing to me that I got to spend taxpayer dollars, $125,000 to figure out how to get rid of old lettuce and apples and tomatoes when those should be consumed.
And a lot of the volume comes from post production where it's waste just because it's in the preparation.
Oh, a good organics person would use every little entity. So
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
if I could mention that at the Parks and Environment Committee, you brought this up, and I said that really we had done some real intentional work on trying to figure out how we could improve the food recovery system here. And since that meeting last week, I went back to the contract, and I think within the work of developing an outreach and educational plan, I think we could incorporate a process for working with those institutions as we talk to them, getting to know how they work and looking at ways for recovery, because I agree that there's a lot that's edible that should be directed. So, of course, that's higher on the priority, reuse, and I'm sure that the state would be really appreciative of our tagging that in as part of the work plan.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob.
So another question I'd have is the 93,000 and the 23,000 in kind. The word incubator had been kicked around at some of the Parks and Environmental meetings. Is this money entirely for study, or is it to actually start to get something on the ground? Will any of this money, will there be any product out of it, or is it just entirely study?
Well, it's a study, but I think it's a good product that will come out. I mean, I'm anticipating that we'll get a good product, which will be a lot of information that will allow the private sector to judge whether or not they think it's a good opportunity for investment. I will say that on the PowerPoint when I referenced the largest food waste composting facility in the state, that was the Midwacaton Sioux composting facility in Shakopee, and I specifically asked, is this feasible? Is it possible for us to find a way to do this, be able to recover enough money to cover operational costs and fixed costs? And he said, yeah, he thought that wasn't that would be a possibility, and he's had 5 years of experience operating that and really moved it from to a much more profitable entity for them. So one of the first things we will do if you decide to accept this grant is we'll take some people up and we'll go learn exactly from them how they're doing their operation, because that's really a successful one.
So,
Can you come to the microphone, please?
Yes, of course. Just one quick thing, unless I'm called upon for something later. Commissioner Jacob, I just wanted to take a moment to reiterate that any input that that we have received, we've certainly been listening to from all board members all along the way in the process and at Parks and Environment as well. The addition of engineering drawings for wastewater and for anaerobic or aerobic decomposition processes is going to be an important part for anybody that wants to build something pretty much immediately. So not just the business plan study and waste reduction and those elements, but I feel like that is going to contribute significantly to someone's ability to get something on the ground much more rapidly. And if you've paid some engineering bills, like the county engineer and that department, these are some serious in drawings that will be made, and they will be in direct relationship to the permits required by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency themselves. And since it's an MPCA grant that you're being asked to accept, I think that will help line things up better for someone from the private sector to get something in the ground more quickly. So I don't want you to think that it's just a study that's going to sit on a shelf, because I think these drawings will be extremely valuable.
I have a question about that information that you've just shared. So you're saying that the study will be a study that private industry can use to make a decision about entering a business plan or whatever. And part of that study, whether will be dealing with the quality of the product. Is the product that this composting facility will produce or can produce, is the product usable in the way that we thought it would be? So it will include that.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then the other leg of the stool is, what permits are required from the MPCA, what engineering needs to take place to, put those components into a facility that can get operational much more quickly.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
If there's no other questions, I'll let you take it away as you were.
Commissioner Jacob?
So with the 93,000 and plus that would be roughly 23,000 from the Winona County staff in kind. What would be the plan? That's going to tie one of our employees up at least quarter time or maybe more. So will that create the need for us to have to hire somebody to cover that?
No. This would require about 10% of my time over the period, and I'm by far the biggest contributor. I think the next person is 5%. So, no, we think that we can do this with our current staffing.
And then when was the grant actually attained? It has not been attained yet, right? Or when was it?
We were granted the grant.
When was that approval?
The approval was a while ago, but we couldn't bring it to you because we had to develop the work plan with MPCA staff, and then the contract had to also go through the state, the attorneys for the PCA, and that took many months because of, well, yeah, so.
Can you give me a better sense on when a while ago was?
We might have gotten word in June, I'm guessing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't see a date.
Yeah, I couldn't out of the information that I was reading. But so the reason I asked that question was in the majority of the letters that were submitted as support for the project, the statement, as I'm reading from this one, we understand that Winona County has received a state grant to do an in-depth analysis of the costs and opportunities associated with locating an SSO facility in our region. And then they go on, this is repetitive in the majority of these support letters. Given that there are no costs to Fillmore County associated with our participation in this grant-funded analysis, and that our inclusion in the feasibility study in no way commits us to taking any future action, we are happy to participate in a thorough consideration of the economics and logistics of the organics composting here in our corner of the state. So, I mean, it certainly, there's no reason for these counties not to support this, it looks like they've got literally no commitment or skin in the game, right? This is a Winona County initiative.
Other than staff time to work with us, sort of rather like us.
Okay. And some of these were as early as April, I think. So, so I'm surprised as a county board that I wasn't aware that we had been awarded or approved, and we're going to the other counties and having that conversation with them. The other question I'm going to have for you, the biggest solution we have currently, is that the Galleon Farm? Is that what we're using in Winona County?
Some people are using the Galleon Farm. Mhm.
Okay. So will this be a surprise? Will this meeting and discussion come as a surprise to that current operator, or has the county reached out to them to let them know that we're pursuing something that will certainly be competition for them?
We have reached out to them, and they're aware of this grant coming forward.
And did you ask for their input, or do they support this, or where they stand on it?
I haven't spoken with them in a good while. They haven't seen this proposal, but,
I was just going to say, because this would be a regional facility that could possibly not be built for a decade, depending on, where funding is at for private industries and their, projections and plans. The current facility that is operated by Mr. Gallion in the city of Winona could be as likely as anyone to step up and want to operate on a more regional scale. So just like our representative from our recycling program, Mr. Gary Harder, who's here tonight, and others who could be potential, operators of such a facility, all of them will be contacted by the consultants to, provide input into the project, and so that they're aware that this opportunity may exist in the future, and so that the benefit of their experience is part of the mix. So nobody would be precluded. Just because Gary happened to have come here tonight, and thank you, Gary, for braving the weather, he's not the only voice that will want to weigh in and, be the beneficiary of the research. Thanks, Ann.
yes, thank you. And the city of Winona also does have a small yard waste compost facility too, and that didn't prevent them from signing off and wanting to support this project. I don't think they felt it was a competition.
So I felt like I kind of got two different paths on the answer. What was the current facility that operates in Winona County? Are they aware of this, what we're discussing here this evening? It's clear that we've reached out to one potential Harderts. They've been reached out to. I'm just wanting to make sure that we're being fair with the community.
And I think Kay's point is exactly right, that when we do this, our consultants will reach out to everyone that's involved, and we'll work toward a solution that works for everybody.
And so I'll ask it one more time, a little bit more directly. When Mr. Gallion picks up the next newspaper, is this going to be news to him, or is he going to know that we've been discussing this?
I haven't reached out to him since we brought it to the board in March, and you gave the approval, or maybe it was shortly after that. I've spoken with Mr. Gallion a number of times, and I'm real supportive of what he does, and it's hard for me sometimes to know for sure where he's going to land. So
it could be perceived as competition. This could be, or not. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Sure.
Whether I can.
Mr. Engen? Yes.
Could I speak to that for a second? As part of the committee, I think the main idea of this research grant is not to be in competition with anybody. It's a research project to develop best practices, which could be useful to anybody that's existing in business now or in the future. So that's kind of how I see this proposal going forward. Not to be competitive with the independent market, but to support them.
I guess my concern with it is we've got Hardards here, but we haven't talked to the one person who's operating in our county currently that we're using for a solution, so I just don't feel good about that. So I'm going to have the same frustration I have on just about all my soil and water boards, is that we spend so much money on administration and planning and development, and it's frustrating to spend yet another 120,000, whatever this is going to, about 120,000, to have nothing on the ground. No, that's a lot. It's a lot of taxpayers' money, and it's interfering with private industry, and I'm not sure that it is going to encourage competition. I also feel that with time, it's very likely that the private sector will handle this issue just like they're handling it now, and by the government stepping in and interfering with it, we might upset what the private sector would come up with for a solution.
Commissioner Ward.
Yeah. I did have a question, the role of La Crosse County. They're in Wisconsin, and they indicate in their letter, that they're not inside the grant area. So how much time and energy is going to be spent on gathering information from a county that's not within basically our jurisdiction, and what role do they play?
There's a lot of our solid waste that goes to La Crosse. It's actually part of the region, and it's true. They're not in Minnesota, so any facility that would be built if it had any state money or anything, it would definitely not be there. But we expect that we want to include them. We're not going to spend a lot of time, and we stated to them that unless they were very serious about participating, that we didn't really want to go into it because it will take some time. So we really need to be true and want to be true to looking at the regional approach, because that's how it's going to make it economically feasible.
Well, and with that said, they're a regional player, but they're in another state, so it does.
All our garbage goes out of our state.
I know we pay dearly to get rid of it. Thank you, Wisconsin, and I don't have a problem with that, I guess. But it's how the system is. But I guess I'm not clear, because I can see them having much more industry and things going on in La Crosse that would create food waste than we do even here in Winona, because they're twice the size. Population-wise. So I guess I'm unclear as to how their statistics would skew a study. It could skew it considerably because of their size and their, okay.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Ward, with regard to organics composting, usually it's a good thing to get more volume.
Right, so I understand that, but then when they say they're not in the, and if it's truly a regional, we shouldn't be looking at state boundaries. But then did MPCA outline that this is Minnesota? It's not a joint project between Wisconsin PCA and Minnesota PCA. So.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Ward? Sure. In fact, the MPCA has provided some grant funding to do some regional planning with La Crosse, and they worked on the work plan, and they're very on board with this regional approach, with including them.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob.
Okay, so I think the final piece for me is, tonight is the first I've heard about Olmsted County, and I think that would have a huge impact because they're going to be really the biggest volume. They could create more volume than the rest of these counties combined, I'm going to guess. It's unusual that Olmsted County would reach out. Usually they just do their own thing. When it comes to AMC, everything that I've been a part of, Olmsted County, just when they're going to do something, they do it. So this is out of characteristic, or out of their character for them. But I think that would really be a good thing. And for that reason, with Olmsted County and the current facility not being here at the table like our Hardards is, I'm going to move to table this until we have more information from what Olmsted County's position is and what the Galleon, the current facility in Winona County, I want them both to be part of this.
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion to table with a second motion by Commissioner Jacob.
By the way, I'm in error. When you table, that ends
Yeah.
discussion.
Okay, but we need a majority vote to lay it on the table.
Right.
Okay, all those in favor of laying this issue on the table and picking it up at a further future date signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay? Nay. Okay, I'm sorry. The motion is defeated, so let's continue our discussion and our focus.
I want to make a motion, we accept the grant.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to accept the grant and the presentation, to accept the grant, excuse me. All those in favor of accepting,
A little discussion.
oh, is there discussion? Sorry.
I do appreciate Commissioner Jacobs' comments that, and I think you covered that everybody will be involved with the consultants and come up with a, best action plan. If there is, it might be fine to be not feasible. So that's what we're going to do a feasibility study for. And I want to keep Marcia's kitchen table in the mix too, in case she wants to have it there.
Maybe we EDA and buy everyone in Winona County a tabletop composter. But your electric bill might be really high.
Solar.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Commissioner Jacob.
For the simple reason of, without anything else, I see this as an expansion of government and an expansion of government's involvement in something that I think the private industry will handle. I think there's a private industry already operating in Winona County, and we're going to compete with that person. And since I feel like they weren't at the table and that I feel a little bit going maybe behind their back, I'm going to vote against the motion. That's my reasoning.
Commissioner Meyer.
Well, I think that the proposal lays out some of the benefits, financial and environmental, for organics composting. And the MPCA is going to give away the money for a study. I'd love to see the facility in our part of the state. So to me, it seems like a great thing to do. And then perhaps we can help stimulate private industry to do organics composting once this study is over. So I really support the project.
Is there any further discussion? Okay. I heard discussion that removing this compost from the garbage is a benefit to our citizens because their garbage will cost less by weight, and that it may improve environmentally the breakdown of the rest of the garbage, which goes to landfills or incinerators. This grant is a business opportunity, or will present a business opportunity. Basically, we're doing the research and design, and the information will be available for any business to use at the completion of the study as part of their best practices if they're already in business or as a new business. It involves regional opportunities, and the county match is with staff time, which is clear in the grant. So is there any further discussion? If not, let's vote. Okay, all those in favor of accepting the grant application signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Nay.
Okay, the motion passes. So we have accepted the grant. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for your hard work, and thank you for those who made a special trip in tonight to speak on this. Okay, item 7.1, receive the Recorder's Department update. This is on page 138. of the agenda package. So, thank you, Mr. Bambenek. You traveled in also tonight, so.
Good evening, Commissioners, and also our guests tonight. I'd also like to welcome the Winona State students. I'm a graduate of Winona State, so I'm always trying to keep track of what's going on at the university. Thank you. Just a few brief comments, an overview from our office. We've got a couple of office updates and then a legislative suggestion. And a couple of times I went through this, was about 9 minutes, so maybe Heidi can tell me how we're doing. All right, 2018, very positive year for real estate sales in Winona County. 670 home sales, 44 were over 300,000, and maybe most importantly, 71% sold above county market value, and that number went up even higher at year end. We're part of an area that stretches from Winona to the west part of the Twin Cities that's had a very high level of real estate activity. Not all areas are sharing in the good fortune. High sale for 2018, almost a year ago now at Dresbach. A nice home on the river sold for $650,000. 2 weeks later, still in the cold of winter, a neighboring home sold for $650,000 as well. Actually, the first one was $750,000. I misspoke. So we had a $750,000 and a $650,000 about 2 blocks apart. Foreclosures were the lowest in recent years. We had 17. There were 25 in 2017. We set kind of a new benchmark in 2017. We had the largest number of single persons purchasing real estate, and there was a big jump 2 years ago. Well, that trend continued in 2018. And the bottom line there is it's taking more homes, more single owners. The home that is in most demand tonight for the third year in a row is a one-story, 3-bedroom ranch. Many of them are 1960s style, but many folks are finding that homes built later that were 2 stories and had varying levels just aren't very convenient for them. So if you have a 3-bedroom ranch, it definitely is going to be in demand. 2018 was the third record year in a row for commercial industrial sales. We had 78. I'm just going to mention a few of them because people are talking about the dollar amounts and the value of Winona County real estate. A couple blocks from here on this side of the Interstate Bridge, the Fastenal project acquired 11 properties, a little bit bigger than one city block. The total purchase was $3,912,000. Godfather's Pizza was the most talked about. We had lots of questions, people really hoping that there was going to be this beautiful restaurant on the river. Well, the property sold for $1,250,000 and it will be part of the Bay State trucking entrance. At the Winona Walmart, one of the strip malls, it's called the MGM strip mall. It's on the west side. Sold for $2,365,000. Kmart, a nice development that's taking place, sold for $3,800,000. On Mankato Avenue, the land for the new senior living development sold for $1,966,000. At Lewiston, not long ago, the senior living facility was closed. A firm came in and did considerable work, and in 2018, it sold for $3 million. Okay, we'll switch to good tillable land in the county, and over the last several years, I was here and told you about record prices being paid. The 2 highs for good tillable cropland in 2018 were $8,500 an acre. There was one sale of 151 acres at Saratoga and then 72 acres at Fremont. Both of those farms have good agricultural land. Woodland sales, not long ago we weren't having any. In 2018 we had quite a few. And the range in the sales, $3,100 to $4,600 an acre. In September, for the first time since 1950, in 2019, the county will have a 40-year index for all parcels of real estate in the county. It is needed for title determinations, and what's been happening for the last 15 years, researchers have been saying a good faith effort was made. Now they will actually have the 40-year index to look at. We are one of only 2 counties in the state of Minnesota that doesn't have that index. Now there will only be one, and that's Goodhue. And I am extremely proud to come tonight and let you know that this is happening in 2019. We have one recording that has really generated lots of interest. I want to just tell you about it real quickly. It's called a transfer on death, and it became available through legislation that was really pushed by the Winona area a few years ago at the Minnesota legislature. We had about 200 of these in 2018. The transfer on death enables all of us to name the successors to our ownership upon the owner's death. Not long ago in Minnesota, it took several months of probate and generally about a half a dozen recordings to accomplish that. So it's greatly simplified the process, both for the heirs to real estate and for the processing and the amount of work in the recorder's office. All right, 2019 residential buyers, be ready to pay more for that special home. Those that are well taken care of, and if they have a uniqueness that the public is interested in, they are selling for considerably higher than what we have on the values in many cases. Those are well cared for homes. They're in demand. On the high end, there's more choices. All right, during the past 2 weeks, I want to tell you about 8 phone calls that I've talked to parties on. They're calling and they're asking for information on splitting the home from additional land, sometimes farmland. The call that we normally get is, we're going to split a piece of land and we're going to be building a house. What do we need to do? We take them through some information in our office, and just about always we recommend and suggest and really encourage that they talk to the planning department. So up front, they have their setbacks and information about the sewer system, those vital things that they need. So once the surveying starts, they aren't held up because they didn't get that information initially. But this is a whole different direction. What do we need to do to split the house? All right, well, let's just stop for a minute and think about this. What really is going on? We have the most farms in Winona County in mediation that we've ever had. We're almost getting back to some things that happened in the mid-1980s. And from different articles and from different conferences I've been at, it's probably pretty likely that the 4 years of low commodity prices are pushing some folks to have to split their home so they can finance the home. Typically, lenders today are not real eager to get involved in farm ag financing just because of the demographics of the whole financial picture with ag. So just to let you know that we're getting those calls, taking people through them, and we are coordinating with planning and with the surveyors to make sure that we have all the answers that we'd like the people to have. All right, the recorder's office, we are extremely proud. In 2018, over half of our recordings came to us electronically, and this is just a very high efficiency. When we review those computer images for all of the requirements that Minnesota has, and it's a lot, when we say it's ready, it's good to go, it's recorded, that includes a whole bunch of fees, and there's one of them I'm going to talk to you about just briefly. But we're probably the biggest bonus is that the submitters on the other end have the recording information and the fact that it is recorded immediately. They're not waiting for mail, they're not waiting for special couriers that come to our office or any of those other kinds of communication. So we're proud of that. We're also proud that in 2018 we started taking credit cards for all fees in our office. We started out taking credit cards for some. It was working well. It's very minimal cost to the parties using the credit card and no cost to the county. In fact, there's a very small payback. So finally, after wanting that for 20 years, I think we finally got there. And we're just proud that we can use it across the board. We don't have to say, well, yeah, we take credit cards, but only for this or that. No, we'll use them for all the costs in our office. All right, we did assist a number of entities during 2018. DNR, Fish and Wildlife, had some title issues on the river. We spent a lot of time providing information that was vital to assisting with that. We worked and helped the city of Lewiston, St. Charles, and Winona with legal documentation for annexation. In St. Charles, one of the boundaries of the city has been inaccurate for some time. We finally provided the city all the documentation, had a meeting with them, they reviewed it, and I think we've got that corporate boundary resolved. We had some really outstanding software demonstrations in 2018, and at the recorder's office, we want to be absolutely sure that we have current technology and we have maximum efficiency. And again this year, and this I am so proud of, we authorized the veteran service officers to access our records. All of them for veterans are data private. We've been able to authorize them access so they can assist veterans, and there's no going back and forth. There's no, well, we can help you with this here, but you have to get that there. It's completely one stop. We're really proud of that. Not long ago, we just did a couple 100,000 more records and indexes. We imaged them. And a week ago, we got the first test images back. And I think that was really the highlight of the Christmas season for me. They look just fantastic. In another month or two, we're going to start a detailed verification. That's going to take us to about 800,000 that are permanently imaged, and that is the official record. All right, we've been asked about additional revenue for the county. It came up at the township officers meeting. I was telling you about all the taxes that Minnesota has, and if you're recording a deed, you're going to have to pay what's called a deed tax, and we record quite a few hundred deeds every year in our office. Same with a mortgage. And those taxes, the more the mortgage is, the higher the tax. The higher you pay for a price you pay for a home, the higher the tax. All right, so in 2018, our collections on a pretty good year for real estate were $1,290,000. We retain 3% of that for all of our processing. And I think we could work at it for a while. We're going to show you that $38,000 doesn't cover the cost. And here's the interesting part of it. The state received $1,252,000, and it is a general fund collection. With the current surplus at the state and knowing that the 3% hasn't changed in 40 years, it may be a good time to ask our legislators to increase the county percentage. And I put a little diagram in the agenda for you to look at even a couple percent more, and maybe looking at 10%, and what that would do for us and help with some of the additional staffing that we really need. During the session, we also need to be very diligent in retaining the current technology fees. And in 2018, we're talking about $136,000 that's part of recording fees that is earmarked by state law for new and improved technology for land records offices. So there's lots of us sharing in this, and it is money that we do not have to include in the taxing that goes on at year end. All right, already we've learned that at least 3 different suggestions have come up where certain parts of that technology money would be reallocated for some other cause or purpose. It's working well. It's generated and paid for by those that use our office. I think we need to get our message back to the legislators that this money has been very vital in moving forward the land records offices in Winona County. All right, Heidi, how did I do? Close? No, I was way over. Huh? I'm sorry. That's the update, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate being here tonight because much of this is really timely now, and as we get to February and March, it just seems like the end of the year was that much further back. And by the end of the first quarter, we'll have some new figures for you.
Okay, are there any questions for our recorder?
I do.
Commissioner Ward?
So, Bob, the recorders are an organized group.
Yes.
And so are you proposing any specific legislation to maybe change this 3%?
No,
Nothing specific, just.
It was something that in the past couple of years, we were able to get the legislators together in December, but I know working with Ken, that was no easy deal, and we couldn't get them all here on the same day, no matter how hard we tried. So this year, we're making, I guess, direct contact with them, and we have the masterpiece that's been put together by Ken. But I am forwarding this to our legislators and ask if they would have their staff take a look at it, see if it isn't a reasonable request. It's not taking from a specific state fund, it's general fund money. And if there is more of that, like they're saying, it seemed like it'd be an opportune time to give the county a little bit more for the work we do.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. It's the problem when you start taking money out of any fund, then they see it as a loss on their end. But yeah, 3% is not adequate. Okay, I appreciate any work you can do with your association to push that.
And we will. And I do have one additional handout for you, and we've been working on this, pulling information from the computer system. It has the real estate sales from the last 3 months of 18, has commercial sales for the year, and then it also has the land sales. And if you have a chance, you can take a look through it. The paper for this evening, I paid for it. I'm not for wasting paper. It is on our website. We have a few guests here this evening that would be interested in it, and I'd like you to have the information.
Bob, I have a question for you too. Bob?
Yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned 8,500 is agricultural high.
Yes.
Do you have a medium and low number on that?
Not right at this point. What was a bit challenging in 18 is we didn't have a pool of just land sales. We had landed buildings, or we had some tillable land, but there was non-tillable with it. You really have to put the pencil to it and come up with some specific numbers. And I know that Steve
How does
is looking at
8,500
that.
compare to the last couple of years?
It looks like it's a little softer. But the other side of it is, we have people looking for tillable land still, even with the downturn. And there's been practically nothing available. So I'm just,
Thank you.
there does seem to be a real resounding comeback for woods and woods, pasture, those kinds of parcels. And two things that could be pulled from tonight, and again, this is so preliminary, cannot make any absolute statements. But if we see higher prices for residential, that should build some value there for tax purposes. If we see higher prices for woodland, that should build some value there. And hopefully, in the mix, the tillable land, the good crop land, will stay where it is or soften a little bit. So that's kind of the very preliminary picture. And Steve is looking at a lot of this, so I'm sure he'll have an update and be able to give you some more detailed information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. I know you spend a lot of time, and you actually set a good model for your staff because you focus on accuracy, and whenever you make a report, you always put things in perspective, so I appreciate that. Now we have even more to peruse.
And I think a quick look here really is going to give you a good insight on where these sales are. And again, this is preliminary. It has to go through the whole verification process.
These are the same? I got
two extra staple in there, yes. It's being used by a lot of folks. We still have higher numbers and generally the public coming to our office for information, which is taking a lot of time. People looking for this, they are accessing our website continually. And I want to say that one of the premier ag appraisers in southeast Minnesota complimented us only about a month ago, was right before the holidays, saying that we had just one of the more outstanding spreadsheets, and we had more sales than some of the other counties. And right now, for people that are doing appraisal, especially for the names, they want to look at sales throughout the region.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments before we move on? Okay, item 7.2, review, discuss, and approve Project Find Leadership Group Welcoming Statement and Plan. It starts on page 141 of your agenda.
You want me to?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, Fatima wanted to be here tonight, but because of the weather, she called and said that she wouldn't be able to make it. But I know that the chair is also well informed on this particular subject as well. Project Find has been working on this effort for a long time, and they're going to each of the organizations in the county and eventually the businesses as well in the county next year, I believe, asking for kind of support regarding their efforts to integrate refugee and others into the community. If you look at the document, there's a list of basically ideas for action that talk about different things that organizations can do to support this effort. The county board, of course, is open to deciding which ones you want to pursue. But as a recommendation, from my point of view, I picked 3 that I know that, from an administrative standpoint, we work on already, and also can enhance those efforts as we get opportunities. So it's really an item for discussion by the county board. The document's fairly short and concise, and I'd suggest we have some discussion around and see where you want to go with it.
Okay, we have some background. Is there discussion? This actually came from a committee that Project Find has been operating in the community with following up their survey when they surveyed their constituents or their participating people. They came up with some ideas about making our community a more welcoming community for all people in the community, and that's where this came from.
So I guess I'm unclear. Are we supposed to fill in these blanks tonight, or is
Well,
this
yeah,
just?
there's only really 2. But the first is just picking the organization, or this is Winona County commits to building an organization where all are welcome, respected, and valued. And then, so that's the first one they ask you to define, as an organization or whatever. Then the commitments, there's a number of commitments that they ask you to look at, but of course they want each institution to look at the ones that they might be comfortable with and would be willing to support. The 3 that I identified that are consistent with our current processes and also with the expansion of those processes as we try to improve things all the time are the 3 bullet points on that first page in the recommendation. And those would be demonstrate a commitment to inclusion by regularly reviewing and reviewing policies to ensure they are welcoming and non-discriminatory, train and mentor frontline customer-facing employees in practices designed to welcome and include all, and create or support community efforts to build relationships, understanding, and connections among diverse populations. And, there's some examples of that already. The 3rd bullet point, for instance, we support Project Find and the efforts that they do, and as well as other organizations. We train and mentor our frontline customer-facing employees, whether it's public safety, courts, community services, just general employees. And we try to review our policies for, obviously, to make them welcoming and non-discriminatory on a regular basis. We probably could do, we try to do as much of this as we can, and these are 3 that I felt we could commit to from my point of view. Now, obviously, the board can look at things from a different perspective or a bigger picture or however. But so that's my I guess my suggestion would be, if you're interested in supporting this, those 3 would be something we can provide back to Project Find.
So we could fill in the statement with Winona County commits to building an organization where all are welcomed, respected, and valued, and our commitments that we demonstrate the commitment and train and mentor frontline customer employees, and that we create or support community efforts to build relationships.
Right, and that's all they're looking for.
I would so move. And then I'm sure we can have Fatima in our presence sometime, and she can elaborate. But that would be a good starting point.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the welcoming statement and to include the 3 particular commitments as stated. Is there further discussion? I would make one. The first one says demonstrate a commitment.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt. I see a typo, right?
Well, no, I would say demonstrate a commitment to inclusion by regularly reviewing and revising policies, because the two of those go together.
Yeah, there was a type. That's why I say there's a typo. Yeah.
Okay, just to make sure that we would include both of those activities. I think also in some version of our long-range planning, we might look at the other strategies or ideas and see how they fit with our overall planning, especially in the area of long range. Is there further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the welcoming statement with the three commitments as discussed? Motion made by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. And our next item on the agenda is item 7.3, review and approve a change to the fund balance policy 2.02. It starts on page 146 in our agenda packet.
Yeah, I brought this up because during the budget process, I'd indicated that the county board should review the fund balance policy as we adopt various, budget recommendations or budget numbers. And in the policy, we had before identified 5/12 of operating unrestricted operating expenditures as the fund balance reserve limit. As I indicated in the memorandum, the best practices out there is somewhere between 3 and 5/12 of your operating reserves, depending on, and these are unrestricted operating reserves, not restricted, the unrestricted operating reserves, depending on your cash flow needs. And, based on that and based on the fact that we have been actually operating under the 5/12s, and our the 2019 budget also shows us operating under the 5/12s, we need to be consistent, or at least my opinion is we need to be consistent with our practices. So our policy should be consistent with the practices. So I'm recommending that the board adopt the 3/12 language. So it's a simple change of that the policy instead of 5/12 would be 3/12 of the unrestricted operating reserves. And I did provide, I believe, I don't have it right in front of me, but some information on what that would be based on that document that was in the budget.
Yeah,
So.
and on page 149, you've included the policy itself and shown where the change is made. It's in item 5.
Right.
And it
It
replaces
should be in
5
red,
to
yeah.
3 months. Are there any questions? I have a question. Does this have an effect on our county rating, our bond rating?
And that's one thing I didn't mention in here. The way the bonding services work the first thing they look at is a reasonable policy. So this is reasonable based on various best practices. The second thing they look at is if you're actually following your policy, because that tells them that you're being consistent. You could be counted on as being consistent in future years. And so that does go into the discussion of your bond rating. The last time the county, per se, didn't go out for bonds, but one of our, I think it was SEMCRA, went out for a bond issue recently in the last year. And as part of that rating process, they asked about those kind of things. And so this is important to have those be consistent and that the board adopt things that are consistent. The inconsistency is where it can affect your bond rating.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, the board would entertain a motion.
I'll move.
Okay, we have a motion. A second? We need a second, please.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Jacob, to approve the change to the fund balance policy as discussed from 5 months reserve to 3 months. All those in favor signify. Is there further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, we're up to item 7.4, receive presentation of space consolidation overview.
Yeah, this is really just an update. Maybe presentation was a little bit much, but I provided a document to the county board that includes basically an overview of where we're at, kind of where we're going. There are certain things that aren't established completely yet, and then other things that are already, we've got, real numbers, and we're starting to drop those into place. The county board did approve a few things tonight on the consent agenda that allows us to move forward with this process. I think the big things that you can see is we do have a floor plan. The departments that are involved met 3 times, as well as met some on the side to discuss the floor plans, the basic flow of customers, the basic flow of employees, the security issues, public access, all those kind of things. And the floor plan was laid out. The floor plan's not, it's really very open, and so most of the work that after it's made open over at the county office building will be in, the furniture design and in terms of where the partitions are set and desks and so forth. We're trying to retain as many of the assets that are already there, like conference rooms, offices. If they worked into the floor plan, we wanted to keep those so that we didn't have to recreate them or tear them down or do any kind of extra work. We tried to keep everything in line with the idea of being as frugal as we could be with resources. So we do have that. That's attached to the document. We also have in the document some information about the timeline, and I think that's something that people might be interested in. Right now, the next step is to have the architects basically make the drawings into construction or bid type drawings so that we can go out for bids. That process takes a while. We expect to look to be awarding the bid sometime around April, beginning of April. And then there'll be a construction phase in the summer. It's listed as May to October, but that also includes the last part of that being moved into the new space, depending on how construction goes. We anticipate that will take all of October to get moved into the building, and maybe longer, depending on how different phases go. It's a tricky process because we have a number of moves to make in phases. We have offices to move from one place to another before you can do the next thing, and then before you can do the next thing. And so there's a number of interdependent moves that have to be made, and so it's not just a one project where you build something and then move in. There's different phases. We've worked with community services to realign their processes and move what they have to different spaces. We're still working on a couple things. One is the license center. The plan had always called for the license center to not be in the new consolidated building or over at the county office building. We're still looking to see how that will play out in terms of whether it'll be located in this building or another building. It looks like we'll probably be moving it. And the other part is the WIC offices that are in the county office building. We're evaluating whether the best choice is to provide new space for them or to look at an outside location. There's some thought that while we can find space for them in the building, that customer service-wise, it may be better to have them in a different location that might be more akin to where other health services are provided, because that's a direct service where people come in with kids and families and all that come in directly, and trying to find a way to put them in more of an office environment might not be the best for customer service. And also there are parking issues at that facility, which we'll always have, and even though we're going to work on, we want to be conscious of the fact that we want to provide as much customer service as we can rather than focus on just getting them in the building. So work with the public health people to try to figure that out. So that's in motion. We've got furniture that fortunately we can reuse some of the furniture in this building, that mostly the desks and file cabinets and things like that. The area that we have a problem with is the partitions. They come from a number of different versions of the furniture over the last 30 years or so. Some of them are powered, some of them aren't powered. They're not compatible. Over the county office building down in the income maintenance area, some of the power distribution is kind of ad hoc, the best word maybe, and we need to clean all that up. They have problems with power going in and out and things like that. So we're addressing that as well. Storage space, talked in different memos to the board. We found that there's storage that we need to really clean up. There's storage that we have, things that we have stored that can be eliminated, that aren't useful. There are things that need to be stored in certain places but not accessed very frequently. And then there's things that you need to store, obviously, and access frequently. So the best use of space is to use prime office space for office and customer service and the public access, not storage. And so we're trying to weed that out as well. And we've got a couple good solutions for that, and we're working on those. I think from that perspective, the parking, we have not moved forward very far with parking. The idea, as you know before, is to look at the monument building location and the maintenance building location on the county office building lot to see if those can be torn down and reused as parking. We still need to get better quotes on that and to determine the feasibility of doing that and the cost. So we're looking at that. We have not done plans for that yet, so we don't have that information right now. Let's see. Household hazardous waste. We're moving the Veteran Service Office over to Household Hazardous Waste, give us more visibility for veteran services and good public access. Without stairs and so forth. That work is underway right now. We had to reorient a few desks and a few small walls and upgrade some heating and air conditioning, and also put in ADA accessible power buttons and locks for the doors. But that's all in process right now, and that'll actually should be accomplished in the next couple months. So if you have any other questions, I know that was quick, but I did provide backup here and information with the documents. So.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Ward?
You mentioned parking, and that is going to be crucial. Have we had conversations with Fastenal or the city of Winona to somehow, so we don't all have to take valuable real estate and make parking out of it?
Yeah. I have had conversations with Fastenal. They weren't far enough along to really provide any good information. I have had discussions with the city as well about making sure that in any discussion about site planning that possibly that we be involved so that we can find opportunities maybe to work with Fastenal if they're going to do some kind of deck or other parking arrangements. We also, obviously parking is kind of tied to jail planning as well. And then that lot that's next to the bridge. Which MnDOT still owns and probably won't provide detailed information until the summer about how much right-of-way they need to retain. So that's kind of an unknown there. But as far as just the consolidation goes, we're moving about 45 people. So if we were able to pick up, 30 or 40 spaces by having the monument building and the maintenance building. Originally, we were looking at the maintenance building and maybe taking the whole thing down. But we've kind of decided that if there's a way we can keep, it's actually two buildings, or almost two kinds. It's got some offices in one area, and then it's got bays in another. We want to basically take the bays down with the exception of maybe something to keep certain pieces of equipment. The back end of it would be the tools and various things they need to actually deal with the campus. So that would provide some parking, and then but the main parking we could pick up is where the monument building is. And we've already we've had some preliminary discussions with Steve Buswell, who kind of works with the dive team and SOAR and all those, about where they might store their stuff, because there's lots of stuff stored in that building. That would probably pick up a significant amount of parking and really help, even for getting the jail issue and the MnDOT property. So we have some unknowns, but we're...
well, as Bob mentioned, we have some pretty expensive real estate, and so my goal would be to keep it as good real estate, not just parking lot real estate.
Yeah, unfortunately, the parking downtown, everybody knows, is at a premium. So,
well, isn't the city going to make us a bicycle-only city soon, and then we won't have a parking problem?
Yeah, but we have reached out to the city and talked to them about anything
Is that just a nasty rumor?
It's going to be bicycles?
Bicycle-only city?
Today might have been kind of tough.
You can't park in the city of Winona? Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, I have some questions. I have two questions. One, I have a question that there are still some costs that we haven't accounted for in the area of storage for the equipment and for the dive and the SOAR materials. Talking about the equipment is like the steer, skidder, and all that.
Oh, here it is.
do we have some idea that there might be increased costs in order to store those materials off-site?
I have, let's see. No, I have, in the budget is dive, rescue, store, and other storage. There's a $60,000 allocation for that.
Okay,
So that's already there. But we don't have a good price. We don't know.
so we don't have it placed.
We don't know what the solution is. We don't know, we've talked about, renting. We've talked about looking at,
Okay.
a pole building somewhere, that kind of thing. We just haven't gotten that far.
Okay, so it includes that equipment and the sewer and dive
Yeah.
team, but we just don't know where it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
and again, I put 60,000 in allocation, but I don't really have any good
Okay,
estimates yet.
thank you for clarifying that. And we don't know the extra costs for parking.
The parking, we have some allocations in here, but we don't, again, we have, under expenses, we have demolished the monument building, let's see, parking maintenance, replace paving, yeah. We did get quotes early on for paving, once we demolished the buildings, and we have 90,000 and 40,000 in there. 90,000 for the monument building and 40,000 for the maintenance area. Those were quotes. I wouldn't suggest that they were, we would rest our hat on those. They were pretty easy off the, how much would it take, and then you get a basic quote. It wasn't a full contract for service. There wasn't any investigation done to figure out, what kind of permit requirements we have to meet and things like that. We have had discussions with the city about doing that, and they've got some basic rules, but we can do it. So those numbers will get firmer as we go along, but I do have allocations in the budget for all those things.
Okay, and then I have some, is there other discussion? Because the chair needs to wait.
I'm
Okay.
just answering questions.
I have two questions about the floor plans, which are not included in the package, but were part of our
Yeah, I sent out
email
to you, yeah.
correspondence. First of all, the lower level shows half of the lower level. That's the half that we are changing the configuration of. Is the half that's not here going to be the same as it currently is?
The port, it's not quite half, it's about a third, but
Okay.
just so you know, to
Yeah,
get
it
perspective,
just
but.
ran off the page.
Yeah, no, there's only shows that much,
Right.
but it's only about a third of the actual space. Right now, there are some workstations in that space where we need to provide income eligibility offices and possibly WIC. So that's been allocated that way. We need to move those people over to the space that's currently on the other side. There's a large area in the middle there that's occupied by basically a copier and a large file system. Most all of that is empty. So the file system will go away, that other stuff will be condensed, and the workstations from the one side where the officers are going to go will move over there. So yes, everything will be in that area. Some of it will be rearranged slightly to take advantage of efficiencies, because there's some really large aisles and some empty space and that kind of stuff. So it'll be taken advantage of. But yeah, income maintenance would be in that part, and then the income eligibility offices would be in the part that has access for the public and also has security.
And in the function of those two departments, does income maintenance cross over with income determination?
Yeah, they're both the same department.
But I mean, they need to consult with each other.
Well, the income maintenance determines whether you're eligible, and
Right.
then the other people actually provide the benefits and all that. So yes, they do work together in that respect.
The building would allow for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've all, the one thing is, having the WIC offices downstairs is doable. Jill and I are just going back and forth on whether whether it's the best solution.
And would the lower level have access to the public?
Yes. There's actually, on the plan, there's there's elevator access, as well as,
So it's not a restricted area?
well, the area for income maintenance and WIC are restricted to the public, because you can't have them in income maintenance where the private
Right.
data is. Yeah.
So the interview rooms would be still up on the main floor?
No, they'd be on the lower floor.
So people would come down to the lower floor?
Yeah,
Okay,
public access, they'd come downstairs, get their interview, and
okay. Then I have some questions about the main floor. I'm concerned about the shape of the county boardroom and the actual efficiency of it. it is a long and narrow room. I think it limits our capacity to interact with the public, so I'm concerned about that. Not sure if this shape room would be suitable at all. I'm concerned about the loss of the family play area. I was in the building the other day, last week, just doing some work, and I happened to overhear a discussion. A family had come in for an appointment, and they were headed to the interview rooms on the one side, and the mother had her grandmother said, "My child is in the car, and her grandmother is out there with her." Well, it was a very cold day, so the person said, "Please bring them in and let them into the playroom." Now, the playroom was already being used by another family also, so I don't see a playroom in the current plans. Did we lose that opportunity for our?
Yeah, we don't have a specific playroom laid out. And that's one of the reasons we're looking at whether WIC would be best located in that building or not.
Okay, I don't know whether this appointment was for WIC or not.
Well, if we moved WIC, for instance, income maintenance could still be there, and then we'd have room for a playroom.
Okay.
So adjacent to it. And so there's also.
So that would be on the lower level?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could accommodate it if we moved WIC. So you've got a couple things, you're juggling there. If we want to do that, I think there's a number of reasons why we might want to relocate WIC to an area that's adjacent to another health service. We had talked to Hiawatha; they were interested in it. I know Jill's reaching out to Winona Health and also to, I believe, Gunderson with their new clinic facility. They may have room, and it may be better served if that kind of public health service is available right there where you're doing other things like, having checkups for maternity and different.
Right, I understand that. Thank you. Well, we don't know if the play area or the family area is used by people other than WIC appointments. So I assume the times I've been there, that area has been used, and I've been there probably 4 or 5 times since October-ish. And, I'm not taking account or anything, but I'm just noticing that play area has been well used. And it's private, people can see into it, so it's not, you're not closed off. But I've even seen interviews taking place in there. Our staff person goes in there while the child is actually playing, and then they seem to be doing whatever business they might have been done in those little interview rooms down the hall. So I would say we have a need for a family room or a playroom somewhere in the structure that all parties, whether they're WIC or not, would have access to it. I have a couple other concerns. One is I notice on the floor plan that the recorder staff seems to be split up. We have 2 recorder stations up by looks like a new counter, so are they actually going to be doing reception? This is on page 26 of the email that Mr. Fritz sent to us.
We've gone around and around on the best solution for that, and there are some, I wouldn't call it, they're not really doing reception, but there are several people that are counter-oriented because that's where people come, and then they do some work there. There's when you say they're separated, there are 2 cubicles, if you want to call them that, outside of the recorder's office, and then there are 2 right around the corner in front of them. So that's
I see one outside the recorder's office.
There should be 2 directly outside the.
One's a storage and a copy area, and then it says recorder.
I don't have that one in front of me, so it may be.
Page 26 of your handout to us in an email. I'm just concerned about that. I know that our recorders are very sticklers they have to be. They're dealing with those property descriptions, among other things, and people's valuable pieces of paper. So I'm not sure they have time to deal with reception activities at the counter. And then if that was the plan.
It's not by reception. What do you mean? When someone has a
well,
question for
these
the
2 stations are right at the new counter. So
well, but there's The one thing you can't see in there is, however, we decide to add partitions. So whether a partition is this high or
Well,
this
is
high.
there a counter there or not?
There's a counter there, yeah.
Okay, then someone from the public could step up there and be asking to see someone in the recorder department.
Right, right. And the idea is that there's actually one of those stations, I believe, is for vitals, okay, which is now going to be part of the recorder's office.
Right.
So they would, if there's a question of vitals, that person goes up to the counter and, deals with the public and provides the information.
Well, I went to the county profiles, the department profiles too, to look at the activities for each department. Now, the recorder is also going to be handling our census, which is, upon us almost. In terms of planning, it's certainly in the planning stages, it should be, with our recorder. So I just want to make sure that the staff can accommodate these working conditions and get the same tasks done with the same efficiency and effectiveness. And I have a question about that. My question about the proposed county boardroom space, I would think we need to be looking for some alternate space, either in the building or someplace else.
Yeah, we could certainly do that, but there's no room in the building to have that big a space. That's the space that we have.
So we would be accommodating ourselves to fit into that space.
Well, if you look at the diagram, there's a significant amount of room for the board, and then there's, I think, 52 seats.
Right, but I see seats here where people would literally have to turn to be in touch, in contact with the audience.
The five
Whoever
board,
sits along the side, there's, in the horseshoe shape. So, I'm just concerned about.
Well, I say we take out the chairs and the desks and we just have a standing meeting. It'll go faster, quicker, and take up
if you
less
look at,
space.
if you look at the,
Taking care of some public health
It
needs.
doesn't look like we're reusing this table.
yeah, well, the cost to try to redo this versus using something that's probably, more, not millwork,
This is so nice.
cost, yeah. Yeah, if you look at the U that's laid out there, the 5 board members that are, the 5 right there they all have direct view of the public as you do now. It's the 2 on the side, which typically is the county attorney and myself. And in reality, the county attorney has a view this way, not much different. Yeah, you'll have to look. If you look at, for instance, the layout of the city room, it's very similar. The staff's kind of on the side, and then the board is in
Right.
front.
I think the city room is wider.
It is. Oh, it is wider. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying
I'm saying
that.
we should look for a wider room. Okay,
I'm saying that we should minimize our footprint because we're only here virtually in action twice a month. So I wouldn't want to put too much emphasis on our space. I think we can.
And I
I want
also,
to make it usable space when we do use it, an
Well,
effective space.
and if you, and you've been over there a lot for instance, the advisory committee meetings and so forth.
Yeah.
We essentially make this U out of the tables right now every time we have those kind of meetings.
Yeah.
It's not a curved U, it's a right angle U,
Right.
but we do that every time we set up those tables.
Right,
And
but we're
sometimes
not
we do
in
it-
touch with anyone on the other side of the room. We
Right.
make that so that we can function as a committee.
Right, but this room is multi-purpose and only a small portion is used for the county board
Okay,
meetings.
I would like to see a revised floor plan to address some of these. I'm not ready to approve this floor plan tonight, I guess.
Well, I wasn't actually asking you to approve.
Well, you said approve the agreement with the architects to develop
Right,
construction
did that.
plans.
Yeah, we did
We
that.
already did that.
This is just a report. This is just a report, I think.
Well, we didn't approve this.
Yeah, it's in the county, it's in the BKV consent agreement, yeah.
It was,
This is just a presentation, received presentation.
6.4.
Right, and I'm saying I have questions with the arrangement. Are there any other questions?
I do have a question.
Commissioner Meyer, thank you for waiting, I'm
No,
sorry.
I thought maybe your question would get answered, but, so,
quite.
the idea with WIC, so you are actually thinking that it may not be able to be accommodated at all in the building?
No, we can accommodate it, it's just whether it's best served somewhere else, where the
Okay.
customers are best served somewhere
So
else.
we might move it elsewhere, and then that's, we haven't really, is there a contingency fund, or have we budgeted for that, or is
Well,
that?
the same, it's going to cost us money to build that out downstairs.
Yeah.
And also, the way WIC works, if you lease space, 75% is paid for by the WIC program. So
Terrific.
it's not just us,
Yeah, I'm assuming it wasn't, there are contingencies for
Yeah.
stuff like that anyway, so, okay, great.
I don't know if we're looking for consensus tonight, but I would certainly like to try the layout, especially of the county boardroom as it's presented here, see how it works. If we see we have problems, deal with it then. I wouldn't preemptively say it's not going to work and try to. So, Mike, I don't know if we need a consensus or.
I'm just concerned about staff and being effective.
Well, I don't think there's any question that the change is going to take some adapting to. People have been in this building a long time, and people have been in the other building in their spaces quite a while. And whenever you disrupt those kind of things, it takes a while to get things worked out. Will everybody be happy? No, I can guarantee you there's going to be some people that aren't going to be happy with where they end up. But we'll
And
try
the
to address
recorder
it.
stations work together, that was.
Yeah,
one
and they're actually, I see them, I mean, we have gone back and forth on how we could try to lay those 3 recorder stations out, and we'll have to see how it goes. But we will try to accommodate all the issues as they come up. But at some point, you have to make some decisions. And this floor plan is laid out this way, but once the furniture comes in and we start looking at it, there'll be some additional adjustments as well. So you have opportunities to use partitions in certain ways. Once you start fitting furniture in, you may say this would work better over here, and we all agree. It's a fluid process. This is kind of we have to come up with something that works, and this will work, but we need to address each of these things as we kind of go through the process. A lot of details. They're not shown at this level of the plan. So.
Okay, so what's our action tonight?
There's none, it's just a presentation.
Okay. Can we have an update on this at a future?
Yeah, as we go along, we'll definitely provide that information.
Okay, that was the last agenda item. Then we have requests from Commissioner Ward to.
2 things. Thank you, Bob, for still being here. I think I did get your voice message. We do need a presentation and an update where we're going to do with our Census 2020. I know it was a topic. There's some training going on through AMC and through the State Department. It's functioning as our census. So maybe at some point in time, Bob, you could bring us up to speed, and if we need to take any actions. You want to come up, Bob?
7 minutes.
No, 2.
Right. We do have a meeting scheduled next Monday
Okay.
with the designated census rep for our area. And this is important. The demographer takes information from lots of sources. We want to meet with the real person, the census person, and they pretty much determined that Rochester is going to be one of the central locations.
Sure.
And this year, 2020, in that census year, right now we're working with Chicago. In 2010, we worked with Atlanta, and I was very, very impressed with the people in Atlanta. We were quite a ways away, but when we called, they knew us, and they gave us a lot of assistance. It's very important that we know the regional people. So the first meeting is just to get acquainted session. It will be next Monday. Be here at 3, and we're not intending to have a great big group. We just want to have a smaller kind of key group. One of the things I'd be very careful on is that we don't jump the gun and get people all motivated in 2019, because it's April 1st, 2020. That's the big kickoff, and we really need to have the support at that time.
Okay.
So I just really appreciate it, and
Keep us posted.
we'll meet we'll talk about a few of the key points at this time, and then have some plans to meet some of the census people. The demographer is going to be doing the same, and I think she's doing some, a real service to MC, doing some training. But when we start working with all the different parts of the census, we need to know them.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. One other thing from our AMC legislative groups, at the board meeting last week. We're all getting the update, the legislative, AMC legislative updates, and we also get them from Micah. It's important to follow those. They really work hard on trying to keep us updated as to what legislation is happening. So if you see something there, then that we need to take action, it would be critical to be timely. A little different this year, AMC is actually doing 3 specific work groups that are watching. Transportation funding is a big one. County consideration regarding legalization of recreational marijuana. That's on a lot of headlines. And then the other one is the opioid substance abuse. And so there's been 3 subcommittees tasked with following legislation, being ready and to react to anything that might be proposed and how it will impact counties. So please read those updates and stay tuned. And if you see something that we need to take action on, we need to be very timely in that action. But that's a little different way that they're doing that this year.
Thank you, Marcia. The marijuana issue actually made it into a recent issue of the New Yorker. So if you want to see that discussion,
it's moving.
They were looking at the national picture. In addition to the AMC and the MICA updates, I get updates from NAMI, from the National Association for Mental Illness, and on their legislative package, and it often coincides with our requests for mental health services and planning for that. So that's a very good one to follow. We also have a letter from Mr. Fritz where he's asked for feedback. So I just ask that we give him some feedback on some of the issues he's outlined. So thank you. Anything else before the board?
Well, we should finish up our business that we will need to schedule to finish our closed door meeting, and so that'll have to come up on a future agenda.
Okay.
Future agenda item, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't want our lack of organization in getting that done tonight to be perceived by the public as a reflection of good or bad or otherwise on our administrator. But we do need to finish that.
Okay. And we had a request for the census update on a future agenda also. So thank you. Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn. All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Jacob to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.